There is no faster way to make a CEO, a surgeon, an entrepreneur squirm than handing them a crystal dildo at one of my retreats. And it's so funny because clients that are new to working with me, they're like, what do I do with this? What are the steps? Where's the training video? When we are high achieving, people pleasing women, our pleasure centers are shut down. We are often offline. We are concerned about getting things right. And I'm here to tell you that is the opposite of what you need for great sex and intimacy. So, this is for the woman who's maybe tried the jade eggs, maybe looked at them online, been too scared, downloaded some Tantra workshops, communication scripts, maybe even forced herself to try things or initiate more, because that's what Instagram and the other couples coaches say works. You're looking for techniques. How do I want it? How do I get my partner to want it? How do I orgasm with a partner? But this is the truth that no one is telling you. If you are a superwoman with super traits, you are doing it backwards. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe, no amount of sex skills is going to help. I'm Dr. Jordin Wiggins, and welcome to the Pleasure Principles podcast. I'm a naturopathic doctor, intimacy strategist for high-achieving women, and author of The Pink Canary. I wanted to thank you so much for your support, your reviews, your DMs about how much this podcast means to you. I love hearing from you and love reading your reviews, especially when it helps other women just like you find my show. This is a space for high-achieving women who have everything except intimacy that feels erotic, safe, true, something that is worth spending your time on, something that is worth pursuing, because you've built the life, you've held it all together, you're the strong one. But when it comes to your desire, you're tired, you're disconnected, or you're quietly asking, is this all there is? You've been told it was stress, it was hormones, a mismatch in drive. But what if the real reason why you were disconnected, not only in sex, but also from your body, is because you've been stuck in surviving? Because you've been conditioned to be a good girl. Here's where we unravel the invisible dynamics that are draining your turn on. Super traits, emotional overfunctioning, and the quiet ways that control and power dynamics show up in love, especially for high achievers. And we will walk the pleasure path to safety, to sensation, to erotic power. You don't need more performance. You need to learn how to receive. All right. Pleasure is not a performance. Multiple orgasms aren't the goal, unless you want it to be, but they are a byproduct of a safe, regulated, receptive nervous system. A woman who can receive, a woman who can feel pleasure, hold high sensation in her body. And I'll tell you, a high-achieving woman with super traits, their nervous system is anything but regulated. They are in their heads, thinking, fixing, ruminating. And you've been taught to center everyone else's pleasure but your own. I've worked with almost 3,000 women over the last 12 years. And I learned that the tips, tricks, things that you see online don't work for women like us. And that is why I created the pleasure path. So let me explain. Why do sex tips not work for superwomen? And I know you, I've been there, where you're saving things on Instagram. Maybe it's something about a technique or a conversation starter, ways to rekindle the connection in your relationship. You try it and it falls flat, or you're either just too tired, too resentful, too focused on everything that you have to do that you are not focused on sex. And I noticed something in the early days of when I started doing this work, and it was focused on pleasure practices, sex techniques. And I was learning that the women that I worked with, didn't have great orgasms, or they struggled to orgasm, or they could only orgasm in a certain position with a certain toy and it was quick, just like a sneeze. Forget multiple orgasms, forget extended orgasms that last minutes. And I know those of you listening are probably thinking, like, that sounds exhausting. I don't have the energy for that. But it's actually fulfilling when you learn to receive. So I used to be teaching that stuff first, but I have learned in my experience, in my years of wisdom, from the feedback from my clients, that you cannot technique or think your way to arousal when your nervous system is in go mode, when you are on, when you are doing, when you are boss babing, when you are people look at you and are like, how do you do it all? It's like not a compliment I want to hear ever again. So my clients want to know, how do I have better orgasms? How do I orgasm with a partner? But this is putting the cart before the horse. This is jumping to phase 3 of the pleasure path. So first we have pleasure basics, like which is like the sex education that you wish you had, the things that you just need to know about your body and your partner's body and how it works. The second is pleasure beliefs, all of the things that we need to rewire in our nervous system where we feel like we have to earn our pleasure, earn our feeling good. If we're not perfect, then we don't deserve to feel good. All of these things, we need to undo that conditioning. And then step 3 is pleasure mastery. When we learn to receive, that's when the multiple orgasms come, the great sex, the reconnection of the relationship. And that is why the things that you've been doing have not worked. So women with super traits, which is probably you if you're listening, you're open, you're flexible, you're loyal, you're hardworking. Those things have gotten you great success in career and in life, but they probably leave you performing instead of feeling, like truly feeling in the bedroom. You are not receiving because your energy is out. It is focused on your partner. Are they liking things? When the energy is coming back in and you have to receive, the capacity is not there. That is something that we have to build first. And then you can apply those techniques, the pleasure mastery techniques, the multiple orgasm techniques, the extended orgasm techniques. When your brain is stuck in doing, pleasing, getting it right, the parts of your brain that are responsible for desire, for turn on, your frontal lobe, your pleasure centers, those are offline. Those are not functioning. You are in your lizard brain. You are dysregulated. So we can teach you all the techniques in the world, but if we don't start with assessing our super traits, assessing our erotic shutdown styles and patterns, and how to get out of them, back into desire, back into receiving, and I say back into, maybe for some of you, it's for the first time, it's not going to work. And that is why I created the pleasure path assessment. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. You can do this assessment with me. We're going to uncover this. What is your erotic shutdown style? What are your super traits? How are these getting in the way of the love, connection, the feeling pursued, desired, that fullness that you really want and crave? Or again, maybe you're so shut down that it's just that's a thing of the past and you're trying to convince yourself that, yeah, I'm over it. Like, it's okay if I don't have that part of my relationship. But inside, there's this knowing, this internal knowing that there's more possible. I want to talk about how super traits kill orgasm for women. So you can be successful, you can be admired, loved, you can have awards, and you can be numb to your own turn on in your own body. So the super traits that helped you succeed, and I want to kind of reframe that because it's also helped you succeed, but it's come at a cost. Often a cost of feminine burnout to your own health. These super traits are things that you have learned that help you survive. So openness, flexibility, conscientiousness, hard work, loyalty, forgiveness. But When we don't know we have these super traits, when they are unbalanced, when they are not boundaried, when we are paired. So if we are a giver and we are always the flexible one, always the open one, always the forgiving one, they become walls to receiving. We end up behind this armor that our partners, our children, people are trying to get in. They want to feel close to us. They want intimacy. But when we are the one overgiving, when we are the one doing the work, when we are doing the emotional labor, when things are emotionally unbalanced, our body doesn't feel safe, even if it is. And that's when we can feel shut down and not even feel sure why. Because our partners can be helpful and kind and good men, but we're like, why are we shut down? Because we've spent our entire life centering things around everyone and everything else, and not our pleasure and our needs and our desires. So, no wonder if we have been conditioned to look outward, we have no tools, no ability to go inward and tolerate high sensation in our own bodies. And a perfect example of this is when we start walking down the pleasure path. We go through the pleasure basics. We start working on pleasure beliefs, and my clients' pleasure centers, their frontal lobes, their desires start coming back online. And then they get scared. They're thinking, oh, like I have this need. I haven't asked, I haven't taken up space in the relationship in this way. And then they get scared that the need won't be met, won't be fulfilled. This belief of like, it's easier to just do it myself, or I'm going to be let down if I ask. And pair that with, we're so used to earning everything that we have. We're hardworking. We don't even know how to just receive, how to just let ourselves be pleasured just because. It's backwards. It's why sex is like the last thing on the to-do list, or we have to do a million things first before we feel like we deserve that reward. So we spent our life centered around everyone else's pleasure, feelings, needs, desires at the expense of our own. And then when we start realizing what they are, we have this fear that they won't be met. And we need our nervous systems to be present with sensation, with the uncomfortability, with the vulnerability that those needs might not be met, or that we can meet them ourselves. And as we're transitioning this from other centered to pleasure centered, where our needs and our desires are important too, like it's why we have to do the nervous system work first before we can do the multiple orgasm work. The real reason that multiple orgasms aren't happening, they're not about skill. They're about safety. They're about surrender. They're about slowness. They're about sensation. And if I talk to a superwoman with super traits and ask her to describe herself, surrender, slowness, these are not terms. These are not things that she knows how to access. So if your nervous system is in doing mode, you're disconnected. You'll disconnect at the moment of orgasm, or things will start to feel really good and then you'll shut it down because you can't hold that sensation in your body. And that's the work. A lot of superwomen that I work with, they can orgasm by themselves. They struggle more with a partner. And I am always, always, always recommending for our pleasure practices that we are starting with ourselves. Is a myth, like again, because then we're centering our pleasure around men, around another person. And when you are a superwoman with super traits that is used to focusing on the other and wondering, is he enjoying this? What do I look like? If you're by yourself, all of that goes away. So it's usually easier to practice having better orgasms, longer orgasms, more orgasms by yourself than it is with a partner, especially if you have super traits. I worked with a woman private coaching, and she's doing the Pleasure Principles group. She's a physician, has children, is the primary breadwinner in her relationship. I'm getting a lot of accountants and doctors lately. this client, she's focused on checking the boxes. And she said that her husband came to her and said, like, this is a big problem for me that we're not being intimate. And she was shocked because she's so busy being the primary breadwinner, doing a lot of the stuff for the kids. She was shocked because it wasn't on her radar and she thought everything was fine. When I asked her about pleasure, what brings her joy, turn on softness, she looked at me and said, honestly, I just want to be able to let it go. I'd like to just be by myself for a couple days and not have to worry about all the things that I have to get done in a day. And that was her definition of pleasure. And she looked at me and she said, like, that's pretty pathetic, isn't it? That I can't even think of more than that I just want to rest and be alone. They'd done marriage counseling in the past. She'd done some somatic work. They tried scheduling sex and date nights, but sometimes that didn't work with sick kids and her call schedule. But no one had helped her understand what I showed her in the first 10 minutes of our pleasure path assessment call, that her nervous system was completely shut down. She was in freeze mode and like functional freeze because she was still going to work, getting things done. Her pleasure centers were offline, and her entire identity as a high performing, responsible person that had all the answers that colleagues came to made her incredible at giving, but she had no idea how to receive. So we were not starting with orgasms with her, with pleasure mastery techniques. We're starting with nervous system regulation, with breathing, with slowness, with enjoying her coffee, with being present during the day, with permission to receive without earning it. And this starts to build safety. This starts to build momentum. This starts to change her relationship to pleasure. Her pleasure centers then start to come back online, not as performance, but as an actual way of being. So when she started to feel joy, excitement, then she starts to feel her turn on again, get those tingly feelings from her husband. Started a pleasure practice that at the beginning of her work with me, if I would have told her your goal is to have 3 orgasms a week, she would have looked like probably would have quit right then and there. But the multiple orgasms, the connected sex, that comes after. So give yourself grace that the way this goes is, if you're trying to do the multiple orgasms first, trying to orgasm with your husband first, we need to do it. We need to change the order. Pleasure basics, pleasure beliefs, then pleasure mastery. So I hope you can have a sigh of relief that everything that you've been doing and trying, it's a lot of pleasure mastery stuff, but we need to start with pleasure basics and pleasure beliefs. The one thing that I want high achieving, people pleasing women to know, the revolution for you is to stop performing, which means energy out, and start receiving, which is energy in. That is feminine. Receiving is feminine. And we are way more comfortable with the doing and performing and fixing, which is more masculine energetically. And this starts with nervous system regulation. Part of what I teach with pleasure basics. Feeling safe in your body first. This is not something that we are looking for our partner to do for us. We have to be able to regulate in our own bodies first. So self-pleasure is it's not just masturbation. It is a practice, a pleasure practice that you can use as your nervous system's training ground. And it also has a ton of benefits. Better immune system function, pain reduction, anti-aging, mood boosting. So the feminine is not performing for praise, not looking for her validation like most superwomen with unhealed super traits are. She is open to receiving what's already hers, the sensation that's there, and she can be present with it. That's pleasure mastery. That's step 3. But this is why Googling how to have orgasms with my partner, how to have multiple orgasms, how to have better sex, you're doing it out of order. as a woman with super traits, and like I said, I created the pleasure path assessment so you can figure out, is this me? Do I have super traits? What's my erotic shutdown style? Where am I on the pleasure path? What's this going to look like? What are my next steps moving forward? You can head to the show notes and book a time to do that live with me. The feedback has been amazing so far. Everyone is feeling seen, they're feeling validated, and they are running, not walking into my group coaching program. But they're starting with the assessment. And it's my goal that every woman, the woman that is disconnected from their own pleasure, disconnected from their body because they were taught how to succeed, how to serve, how to suppress their own needs, but not how to feel, not how to be present with pleasure, that even if she chooses to go no further, she's at least going to understand where she's at, why she's there, and stop wasting time and money and effort on things that aren't going to work for her and aren't going to work for her relationship. And spend that time, effort, energy on things that light her up, bring her joy, because that is going to do a hell of a lot more for your marriage, for your health, for your well being than continually trying to fix this with solutions that aren't working. So if your sex life is duty and no desire, if it is effort, if it is like trying to juggle all the things so that you have time to actually connect, if you feel disconnected, this is not your fault. You were taught to perform, not to receive. The traits that got you success in your career are the exact traits that are hindering your ability to receive pleasure and have the best connected sex of your life. So let's rebuild your relationship to pleasure. Let's learn why. Let's give you language by taking the pleasure path assessment. Uncover your erotic shutdown style, the super traits blocking your intimacy, and a personalized pleasure path plan for your next steps moving forward. Head to the show notes, sign up now. I will only be doing this live for a limited time, and I would absolutely love to connect with you.